as close as you could get to being a king without actually being the king. The titles she held were daughter of the god, which would imply that she was indeed the daughter of a pharaoh of royal blood, and mother king of Upper and Lower Egypt, which would imply that her influence did spread throughout those regions of Egypt. It is implied that she was of pure royal blood, given the fact that she is mentioned more than her husband was. This could be due to the fact that her husband died early, and that her son was just an infant, leaving her the sole sovereign of Egypt at the time. Her titles included daughter of God, daughter of God, daughter of the king, and mother of the king, and mother of Upper and Lower Egypt. It is possible she is the connecting link between the 4th and 5th dynasties, as she is buried with 4th dynasty monarchs and is mentioned within 5th dynasty monuments. In regards to the tomb structure, how would that be? What are your opinions on the tomb structure of Queen Khentkawes?
Queen Khentkawes had a valley tomb that was not what would be expected in an old kingdom tomb.
The main entrance opens to the north, and there is also an entrance from the south. This is unusual for a tomb from the Old Kingdom. Most tombs from this period would open from the east. One potential reason for this is that the queen had deliberately reversed the accepted order of the royal funerary architecture of her time by designing her pyramid to open east instead of north, and her valley temple to open north instead of east. The more practical possibility is that a pyramid city of Menkaure existed here, and thus made an eastern entrance to the Khentkawes temple impractical. The valley tomb of Queen Khentkawes is built of mud bricks supplemented in parts by white limestone and alabaster. Entering the valley temple from the main entrance, you would walk up a wide brick-paved causeway which runs up from the valley in a westerly direction. The doorway was embellished with a portico held up by 2 columns. Once you enter the doorway opens into a vestibule, the roof of which was supported upon 4 columns. As in the case of those upholding the portico, the drums of these columns, which are alabaster and measure 1 meter in diameter, remain in place upon the floor while the shafts have disappeared. The walls are covered in yellow plaster. These soft tones are beautiful and whitewashed.
The small structure known as the washing tent is where the deceased body of Queen Khentkawes would have been purified and embalmed. Structure opens to a limestone drain which runs downward underground, emptying into a large rectangular basin. Though by no means the oldest subterranean water channel known in Egyptian funerary architecture, it is the earliest of this particular type in construction. The debris filling this rectangular basin consists of shards of flint instruments, stone vessels, and potsherds.
Her tomb, beginning from the chapel, has limited artifacts, and it's mostly between redware, pottery, and alabaster statuettes, and fragments of other materials. When you enter her tomb, past the chapel, you begin to find that really everything's been taken away. In her tomb, there's a location for this, what would look like a location for her canopic jars, but they're nowhere to be found. sarcophagus was likely to have been made out of a white alabaster stone, which can be found out through the fragments located throughout her burial chamber. Um, we find that it is actually caved in, this burial chamber, and it took a lot of work to pull through the debris and such, and locate what little fragments there were, as well as there was one object that specifically stood out. It was a brown limestone scarab that was uncarved, which was not likely from her era. This artifact seems to have more influence and craftsmanship from the 12th dynasty, which could mean that possibly her tomb could have been used by others, or have been somehow reused.
Brought to you by Earl Grey, the party team.